Globalization Report, Group 5 by Clarissa, George, Doris, and Monica. Market Participation Strategy. What is Cage Framework by Clarissa? It is used to identify and prioritize the differences between countries that companies must address when developing cross-border strategies. Culture Distances, which is beliefs, values, and social norms. Administrative Distance, which is historical, political associations, trade agreements, relationship, and policies. The Geographic Distance, which is physical distance, border distance, access to clean ocean, and time zones. The Economic Distance, which is wealth, income, cost of labor, resources, inputs, and infrastructure. For Culture Distance by George, for United States, culturally as a whole, Americans tend to drink coffee for its effects. We consume about 146 billion cups of coffee a year. Today, many people cannot function without it. The U.S. has a variety of climates to which people consume coffee. The effects are warmth, energy, and caffeine. For Colombia, Colombians have a different method of using coffee. Their Colombia exports coffee. Culturally, it is consumed as means to bond. Like other cultures drink tea, Colombia drinks coffee for specializing aspects of it. It is also believed to have healing agents which help people when it is consumed. Many cups are drank with a treat like tea. For the administrative factors, Doris, Colombia is a leading country that is recognized for farming coffee of high quality. It is known as the land of coffee. The coffee producers of Colombia worked under the organization called FNC. This organization had helped new programs of communication. It is a different advertisement that is close to the values and the philosophy of Colombian coffee growers. The effort of coffee growers had included the entailment of Colombia coffee to the sports, community, and advertising that started in 1960. It was long before consumers of the entire world through the diversity of quality and options in the coffee industry. Several consumers were demanding that they wanted to have guarantees that are necessary. Globalization became the access of technology for coffee growers. Also, it became profound knowledge to products to be consumers. It guaranteed some responsibility on the label information to provide millions of consumers in the entire world. Geographical factors by Clarissa. The geographical distance from Colombia and California is 3,478 kilometers from each other. Colombia and U.S. have a free trade agreement which helps exchange of goods flow. The CTPA, which is the Colombia Trade Promotion Agreement with the U.S., it eliminates tariff barriers to trade goods and services. Exporting goods from the U.S. has helped the U.S. gain $1.1 billion along with increasing American jobs. Opportunities for accessibility from Colombia, opportunity for U.S. workers, manufacturers, and farmers. Colombia's climate for producing coffee beans has unique geography with the steep hills, and it allows a prevent mechanized growing technique and fertile mountains. Another factor for reducing distance for these two nations is sharing common ground for commitments to protecting the environment. The people of these two countries value the environment, which allows them to hold each other accountable for social responsibility. Factors that increase distance are political differences. Major difference is for U.S. that Colombia does not have its checks and balance system, and the president of Colombia holds the head of state and government. The economic factors is Colombia is known to be a stable democracy. However, corruption and the drug wars have changed the economy. The coffee bean industry helps the country's overall economy and helps aid the farmers and wages in Colombia, as coffee is a global product which is recognized and valued around the world. Colombian wages are much more lower than other nations, but it is a disposable income and cost of living. The biggest market in Colombia is the Colombian coffee bean, and therefore is highly encouraged to grown coffee beans. On a micro level, analyzation of the economy, a farmer will live comfortably being an independent farmer with the market on Colombian beans so high. On a collaborative level, the small farmers have much more power and influence working together as communities. On a macro level perspective, Colombia has been able to provide a product that is globally in demand and thus making international companies work with the Colombian government to produce public goods and services that help improve farmers' capabilities to grow. Globalization Business Strategy by George. Coffee is a global product and an impacted market. It has already been stated that the product flourishes here in the States. In itself, coffee has become a culture full of connoisseurs who enjoy and perfect the craft of drinking coffee. Trying to enter Colombia, one has to analyze the AAA framework. We can look at firms like Starbucks and their paths into entering Colombia's market. Starbucks already has competition in Colombia. Originally, in trying to enter Colombia, Starbucks would target a higher end consumer. Originally, in trying to enter Colombia, Starbucks would need to research who their customer is. If they are rich, then adapting and promoting it as a brand luxury product would work. They would have to run into a limit on who their richer client is. On the other hand, aggregating and providing a product for the average consumer, they wouldn't need to spend their whole paycheck in trying to buy a cup of coffee. Converting Distance into Advantage by Clarissa. The Inland Empire within the coffee industry has been able to take advantage of converting distance in areas such as climate differences in California. California farmers are able to grow coffee beans under the shade of avocado trees, which allow for the beans to get a perfect amount of heat while enough frost from winter is utilized as well. Political stability and a major effect in coffee production, so companies from the Inland Empire have been successful with big countries such as Brazil and their political stability. Another popular trading tip from coffee companies around the region is instead of contracts, you can sell a put option on coffee. Globalization's Distance and You. After researching in part the Colombian coffee distances to globalization, we recognize that we need more about the process of their internal affairs along with the infrastructure of the world's biggest coffee drinkers in terms of countries that export and import. The intended market is ideally people of all nations who enjoy a cup of coffee, but because of the difference in culture, administration, geographical, and economical distances, we've concluded that the market is limited. A more narrow target market would include countries with a high demand for coffee products, Europe, and the Americas. Our group gained insight into Colombia's coffee marketing system by means of articles in scholarly journals that include professors, scholars, and economist reviews. In order for Group 5 to be knowledgeable enough to become trade leaders and join a venture, we would have to really get a sense of overall norms for each country individually, import and export. We need to understand to an extent how the country does business and create strategy to maximize our capital and our relationships with each country. We've learned coffee around the world is a hot commodity and that many countries are now viewing coffee products as an art form as opposed to just a daily beverage. Global business model. The entry modes top for American firms are strategic alliances, acquisitions, licensing and franchising, exporting resources, and foreign direct investment (FDI). Entry modes by American firms into Colombia. One is Starbucks, which they provide a strategic alliance and allows them to gain farmers' resources within Colombia to facilitate market entry. Peet's Coffee, which is an exporting entry mode, and Dunkin' Donuts, which is a entry in licensing through franchising. Globalizing the Value Proposition by George. Continuing with entry modes, we can analyze the value proposition and how other firms have attempted to enter the market. Its initial attempts were rough, but eventually Starbucks figured it out and stabilized a market for itself. Instead of competing with other firms, they chose to work with current coffee giant in Colombia. Starbucks chief executive Howard Schultz has told reporters that Starbucks won't be selling its coffee cheaper than competitors. Their purpose in entering isn't to destabilize any other firm, but to coexist and work with the community to flourish. Paying attention to drinking culture would help Starbucks since wages and lifestyles going up and changing. Globalization for human resources. The most important thing for an Inland Empire coffee firm to enter into Colombian coffee business is to understand and acknowledge the cage framework distances between the countries and developed a human resource team that will facilitate the venture. For Inland Empire firms, or MNES, to globalize and target market Colombia, their human resource structure would require education and training in Colombia, internal and external affairs. To maintain the structure, firms would have to ensure they have a plan for problems that may arise. Approaches for international HRM and training is polycentric approaches. When business firms get to know the country, in this case Colombia, they hire and strategize based off of local needs. Best approach because of Colombia's economic, cultural, administrative distance with the United States is learning from the country and training with the locals. An ethocentric approach where the hire managers from the home country, American managers, this idea is to keep a constant company. Continuing planning for problems strategically, they can get additional training overseas. They can resort to repatriating, and they can also attract or develop talent through the due diligence. Inland Empire firms must do their due diligence in hiring by means of technical competence and adaptability and leadership ability. Through well-educated and trained in regards to Colombian coffee, the potential hire should be technically capable and knowledge for the enterprise. The candidates must be able to adapt their lifestyle by means of relocation, family, and even education due to the variety of new practices, regulations, and styles of doing business in Colombia. And the leaders' ability must be considered by means of potential resistance, resourcefulness, motivation, diplomacy, and most importantly, globalization benefit cost analysis by Clarissa. With our choices to partner with Colombia's farmers and resources, the products for Inland Empire firms and the people of Colombia to be a franchise for our Inland Empire firms, this will create certain risks and challenges in specific areas such as social, political, and economic.